So nobody's building.
Melbourne is just not the place to be. People don't want to be there.
Agents don't pick up the call.
It's really, really hard to buy.
Really?
Very hard to buy.
Where are they going? Will they look at the next house in Carrum Downs? They probably will and be like, oh man, I'm sick of this Carrum Downs nonsense. They're going to pay an extra 20 grand and I can't buy something. You know where they're going to look next? Where is the best place in Australia to buy under $600,000? This is the most common investor profile in Australia. It dominates most of our purchases and most of our investor stories. That is exactly what we're going to unpack today. We're going to go through 3 more Melbourne suburbs to look at for you for your investing journey. We've put a spotlight on Melbourne recently because investors are starting to move there, and it's a pretty good time to be looking in Melbourne at the moment. And for this, I have Adi Chanda, lead buyer's agent at Alaya Property, and a good friend of mine back on the show. How are you, Adi? Nice to see you.
Thank you, Red. Thank you for having me. We were here, 6 weeks ago, I think? Yeah. Talking about another set of Melbourne suburbs.
Yes.
So it's definitely a hot topic.
Yeah.
In the last 6 weeks, I've had probably dozens of conversations around Melbourne. So it's good to be able to do this together.
That episode, if you haven't seen it, 3 best Melbourne suburbs, where we went through a few different areas across Melbourne, Metro Melbourne that we looked at, that got close to 10,000 downloads across all of our channels. Absolutely amazing. You are a popular man, Adi. Congratulations.
Thank you,
How do you feel about that?
I feel good. I feel like I'm a bit of a Bollywood star, to be honest. It's so
you look like one. You look like one.
My mum was very happy. Yeah. My mum was ecstatic.
My mum too. She thought you were a good guy. So she's got a good character of judgment here. She loves me. So, good on you, mum. Hi, mum. I know you'll watch this one. So
hi, mum.
Hello. Let's get into it. I want to talk about Melbourne. Yes, this is the exciting stuff. I know anyone wants to watch this. So if you watch that little bit about us, you can probably skip through it. I'll make sure that we put little chapters in on our YouTube. Let's get into the first area. I have 600 grand to invest in. I've saved up a deposit, call it like 100 grand-ish, and I'm ready to buy an investment property. I'm looking in Melbourne because it makes me feel safe. It's the right point in the market cycle. It's barely grown at all. It's got fairly good employment numbers, and it's not nearly as bad as everyone is making out to be with its economy and its economic change that's happening there. It's pretty positive time to invest, and I'm looking for the long term. I'm not looking for, shooting the lights out this year and next year. It's my foundational property assets that I'm purchasing. Melbourne's my place that I'm looking at. We've done a whole range of videos why we've tipped Melbourne as a pretty good place for this type of investor, and this is really the majority of investors. Where am I looking? Can you give me the first suburb? I want to do a little drum roll. I might put it in After Effects.
Yeah, let's do it. So the first one I love the look of. Firstly, can we just acknowledge the fact that there are sub $600,000 properties in Melbourne, and I'm saying like 30, 35 kilometers from Melbourne. This is not regional Victoria. This is Metro Melbourne.
It's pretty
One
cool.
of the most desirable cities in the world. You still have sub 600K properties. So when people say properties unaffordable, everything's relative. I have bought properties for clients well below 600K.
Wow.
So let's go into.
Are they 1-bedroom apartments?
No comment. No, they're real houses, man. 500, 600 square meter blocks. 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. The whole shebang,
crazy.
Which is amazing, right?
Crazy.
And you don't hear about this.
What sort of condition are they? Are they like rentable?
They are, absolutely. Some of them are rented. They come with tenants. It sort of ticks all the boxes, and it ticks the boxes. I know you love this because they're sort of a little bit dated. They could use a little bit of love.
Perfect.
A bit of paint, I'm going through a renovation project for myself at the moment on one of my properties. Add a bit of paint to it, add a bit of, color to it, change the cupboards around, and suddenly it's a very desirable property, So these come with so much value, add potential to them. And that's what I love about them, And because there's this general sentiment that, Melbourne is just not the place to be, people don't want to be there. But then there are these pockets of Melbourne that no one talks about. It doesn't turn up on the media. And, you see you go to an inspection, there's like 30 people there. And you're like, I don't hear about this in the media. I thought Melbourne's dead. I thought no one wants to be here.
Yes.
And one of those suburbs is Meadow Heights.
Meadow Heights.
Heights,
you just released a suburb. I was like, what are you talking about here? I need to
Meadow
know
Heights
this.
is a great example,
Wow.
It's affordable for its residents.
Yes.
It has, if I sort of look at some of the data that underpins Meadow Heights.
Can you tell me, for the audience, where on earth is Meadow Heights?
Meadow Heights is sort of north of Melbourne.
Yep. Near the airport?
Not quite near the airport, but near enough. It's about 35 kilometers, I would say, from Melbourne CBD. Not too far at all. Very affordable, like I said, for its residents, which is important because that's in the long term. You said, we're looking at properties for the long term. This is not, shooting your lights out, 30% growth in the next 12 months. That's not what we're talking about. This is a long term sort of solid asset. What I love about Meadow Heights is when I look at some of the stock levels in the area, they're plummeting, right? It's really, really hard to buy.
Really?
Very hard to buy. Like long-term trends of stock, stock on market, inventory, everything's sort of depleting over time.
So I think some of this is that narrative that we've talked on this channel a little bit, where there's a flight to affordability at the moment from investors, from homeowners, from everybody, with borrowing power reductions that are in place, with the need for more income and greater yields. And there's more and more demand going into the cheaper areas across Australia. So you're seeing the bottom quartile of a particular location do the best in 2024, pretty much uniformly across the country. And in Melbourne in particular, this is the thing that I really liked unpacking a little bit, where when you start going through the data, you're starting to see that like Melbourne house prices moved backwards. Last month, they are moving backwards at a reasonable sort of clip. Not particularly fast, but that is being driven by the top end of the market.
Correct.
And at the bottom end of the market, the sub 600K stuff for a house, it's pretty hard to buy a house for less than 600K in Melbourne anywhere at the moment. That's the bottom sort of 25 percentile of house prices by median value. Those areas are seeing an increase in demand.
Correct.
And you can start seeing that because you can start seeing green on the price changes in these areas, while you're seeing negative for Melbourne as a whole.
At an aggregate. So
that's like really, really interesting. Let's kick off talking a little bit about Alaya Property and the partnership we have together at Flint Invest. It's very, very exciting. So Adi is a great friend of mine. We have been talking a lot over the last few months. Absolutely wonderful guy with so much humility to the way he works. And he fits the ethos of exactly what we believe in, educating you and democratizing information as much as possible, sharing everything that we know to you so you can make better decisions. That's what this channel has always been about, and Adi embodies that better than anyone, I think, Curtis. So we're going to be doing this podcast regularly, and we're working together at Alaya Property now. How exciting, man.
It's very exciting, man. Honestly, I ran the business last year, and I kind of realized how lonely it is to run a business. But it's also hard to find friends that you can trust to like build something together.
Yes.
So when the sort of our two worlds overlapped last year, I was like, man, there's some, I hate using the corporate word of synergy, but there's some synergies here that we could definitely tap into. So when we had that discussion sort of late last year about doing this together, I don't know, it felt like a no-brainer. And we're good friends. We're probably the two biggest nerds I know about property. Honestly, I don't know anyone else who talks about property in their downtime. So it just made sense. And I'm really excited. I think using your 10 years of experience as a business leader, me having invested for like 10 plus years, I honestly just want to put our brains together, and I want others to feel what we feel. We have a certain level of freedom now.
Yes.
And I just want others to feel the same way. And I can't think of a better person to do it with, to be honest.
I love that. That's very kind. A lot of bromance here to begin with. Putting some context to that, I will be helping with strategy and the economic research underpinning the areas that Alaya Property will be looking at, doing state-by-state research, doing macro-level research to try and identify early economic trends for Alaya Property clients to be purchasing into. And that's part of the role that I'll play here as sort of the investment research person behind Alaya Property. And Adi's going to be leading the team, being the head property guy, doing what you usually do, but at a different scale, because we're going to be hiring a group of talented people to join us on this journey to help build Alaya Property and help with that bigger goal of helping you and many of our clients all across Australia, achieve their financial goals and, purchase great properties that really help you get to where you want to get to. So yeah, maybe call out to anyone who would like to join us. If you're a buyer's agent, you like looking at property a lot, or you have some experience in the property game, maybe even a mortgage broker that wants to move into the buyer's agency space, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach Adi himself on his email.
Correct.
Do you want to say what your email is?
Adi@aleaproperty.com.
Yeah, awesome.
Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm usually on there if I'm not here. So I think that's probably the part I'm most excited about. I think having a group of people with a shared mission to basically bring our, 20, 25 years collective worth of knowledge and just have a shared mission, man. It's just really cool to be able to build something with a team, you know? So we're definitely looking for some really cool people who are hungry to grow this into what we think we can grow this into.
Yeah.
We actually, you know what we know we can grow this into. I know that we can do this.
I feel like I'm rubbing off on you.
I know. You're the energy. I'm just like, what am I even saying right now? But I'm excited to.
That's the old confidence.
That's right.
And that was there. It's pretty cool.
Yes. So we're looking for at least 2 people to join our team initially. We're looking for an amazing person who's, who can go out there, talk to real estate agents, find us the best type of properties for our clients. And we're looking for what we call a client success manager. So they will come into the team, they will have discussions with our clients in the beginning, understand their strategies, understand their goals, and package it all together and sort of coordinate the whole process with the client from end to end. So we're looking for these 2 roles. If any of that sounds interesting and property's always been a bit of a thing for you, feel free to reach out to me.
Pretty cool. Reach out to Adi for some help there.
You know what? There's a bit of a challenge because the last podcast we did was quite popular. You said nearly 10,000 people sort of tuned in, right?
Yes.
Which is very cool. And one of the suburbs I shared there was Carrum Downs. It's been a real hot topic in the last 6 weeks. As a challenge, if anyone's in the market, if you feel like we're sort of making this up, as a challenge, I want you to call one of the agents in Carrum Downs and just ask them what's going on in the area. Just ask them. Because I was talking about Carrum Downs maybe 3-4 months ago.
Wow.
Nowhere near the level of activity that's there now.
Really?
Oh my goodness. I mean, if you oh my God. I mean, each property is getting 20, 25 offers.
Wow.
Offers, right? This is not just people.
Offers?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Like it's impossible to buy property there.
It's just not even cold. It's
flaming
hot.
It's a flaming hot market. Yeah. Frankston, all of
the
those
barbecue's been turned up.
Exactly. Yeah. So yes, at an aggregate level, yes, Melbourne is probably shifting backwards because there are expensive properties that people are just, not willing to put their money into at the moment with, cash rates sitting at 4.25%. But the affordable properties, the sub 600K, of course, there's a lot of demand there. But even in the 700, 750, which is kind of where Carrum Downs sit, it's almost, it's just, there's nothing. There's literally nothing, and it's funny because as real estate agents do, you go on, realestate.com, there's still properties $599 to $650 in Carrum Downs. I challenge you to buy something within $650 in Carrum Downs. It's impossible.
Wow.
Right? They do it very strategically.
Big change.
Very big change, right?
I think that's the 8,000 people that watched you.
That's right.
They're all there.
They're like,
Adi, the new influence you have.
That's right. Yeah. He said it, so let me go buy it there. That's right. It's very interesting, right? So I think, again, when you talk about the drivers at an aggregate level, sometimes the picture can be quite bleak and you're like, oh, that's a bit dire. Melbourne as a whole kind of sucks. Then you've got to remember markets within markets, right? There are suburbs in Melbourne, right? That are, some are doing well. Some I would consider to be cold markets. Some are considered to be warm markets. And the likes of Carrum Downs, I'm like, it's basically like the Townsville of Victoria. Like you just can't do anything there. It's just crazy, So, there's just so much happening in Melbourne at the moment.
And Meadow Heights is next?
Meadow Heights to me is...
It's the opposite of Downs. It's up.
Exactly. But it has all the things. Exactly. Oh my God. The dad jokes are coming out. I love it.
Sorry. Meadow Heights.
Meadow Heights. But that's what I like about it, right? It's affordable. It's not too far from, Melbourne CBD.
Yes.
Like I said, stock levels are sort of dropping. And I know that's a pretty big driver of supply and demand, right? The supply part is diminishing quite quickly.
Yep.
There's just not enough stock, which although, it's the thing that you want, but it also makes it harder to find good property. Because if you only have fewer properties left, and only really 10% of that is really worthwhile looking into. Now, when we sort of talk about demand, again, the days on market for the last 4 years in Meadow Heights has been falling off a cliff, right? So that is then,
Wow.
I mean, a lot of that is being driven by the last 6 to 12 months. But really, the long term and the short term days on market is now starting to plummet. So what if anyone knows property and supply and demand, right? Low stock, high demand, you are going to see prices starting to grow, and it's affordable. Sorry, it's also affordable, right?
Wow.
Just think about what happens.
Good trifecta there.
It's a great trifecta.
Yes.
And when I look at vacancy rates, which is sort of what you want to look at when you want to sort of understand tenant appeal. Am I going to have tenant? Most investors, right? A lot of the conversations I have is, how do I know if my property is going to be rented, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm looking at vacancy rates. They're sort of at the moment, it's sort of sitting at, mid ones at the moment, 1.4, 1.5%.
It'll be rented.
It is quite literally falling off a cliff, like in the long term, right? What it started and where it's at now.
Yep.
It's a heaven and hell difference, right?
Yep.
You put
pressure.
all of that
Pressure.
That's pressure in the market, right?
Yep.
You put it all together, and I would be pretty safe to say that I would put my money there.
Oh, I like it.
So
how do you put his money there, everyone?
Exactly. And part of our investment ethos, yes, there's economic drivers, there's the sub-level data, all of that.
Suburbs.
But the question you and I always ask each other is, would we buy this for ourselves and our families?
Yes.
That is the litmus test for me, right? Yep. That is the litmus test. And if the answer is a unequivocal yes, let's go to a client.
I love this because Adi backs this up. So a big investor yourself, and a lot of the areas that we're not talking about today specifically, but some of the areas that you know of across Australia, you've purchased in before. So that level of experience in actually investing kind of helps frame the ethos of how to invest for other people as well. It's, would I buy it? A very, very simple question. Is the deal good enough for me to buy it? And will I buy it because the area is going to do most of the heavy lifting?
Correct.
And is it really set up to do well? And Meadow Heights looks like one area that's going to do really, really well with that data framework that you just talked about. Exactly. Can you share anything else specifically about the area? What's its socioeconomics like? What's its yield like as well? If there's just a really, really rough yield calc.
Rough yield. So I have looked into. So I'm in the process of purchasing property in Meadow Heights for other people. There are yields, right? So again, one of the drawbacks for Melbourne, and I'll fully acknowledge this, is the holding cost can be higher because the real yield typically is lower, right?
Yes.
But the flip side to that is that I'm still finding a lot of properties with like a 4.5% yield, right?
Pretty good.
Which is fantastic. Yeah. But the really cool thing is because vacancy rates are so tight, there's so many tenants sort of vying for the same property, the growth in rental yields, for example, if I look at rents for Meadow Heights in the last 12 months, it's up 10%.
Wow.
So if you sort of think about it logically, right?
That's good.
Even if you're buying something at 3.6% today, that's like 4% in literally 12 months. So if you have this long-term perspective with your property, which I think are a general ethos is property is a long-term game.
Yep.
It's a
pretty good.
It's a short-term pain. Right?
And here's the crazy thing as well. We touched on this on our previous podcast, but I didn't say it explicitly. I think rate cuts are coming. And more interestingly, with these rate cuts and all the rate cut talks is people are so dominated by the short term. I don't think it's one rate cut. I think there's 2 rate cuts that are going to happen back to back. And realistically, I think there's 3 rate cuts in the next 4 meetings. So if that does happen, and markets are not that far away from what I'm saying, so I'm not saying anything ridiculous here. It's just a recalibration back to, oh crap, we have really tight interest rates. Let's bring it back down to something that's normalized. When you have that level of economic change, that's up the top, one of those macro factors, one of the key macro factors, and we'll do another episode on this shortly, as to what the economic change factors are to drive all the data changes. So when you look at that, you start seeing that the data for yields looks better. 4% looks kind of when interest rates are 6.5%, but when interest rates are 5-ish, with fixed rates coming down a little bit quicker, that starts getting like, okay, I can absorb that. This is a little bit negative, and maybe you can you get a little bit more than 4% with decent acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely, you can. You can do really well with buying something well below market value.
Yep.
But that's what I love, though, right? I mean, there's part of our mission, I guess, at Layer Property is to really help you think about what capital growth really does for you in the long term, right? That's the first thing. I'm not saying holding costs is not important. It absolutely is, right? But if you can just sort of sustain your portfolio for the first 2 to 3 years, right, through sort of, good cash management, good risk management, whatever it is that you need to do, that will put you so far ahead in the long term. If you can just sort of get out of your head, because a lot of people, there's one of the disappointing aspects of my job is a lot of people say no to deals, even though it ticks every box that you want, right? They say no to deals because it doesn't hit this threshold that they have in their head of yield. Oh, it's 3.7%, Addy. You 4%. You said 4%. It's not 4%. It's 3.7. And you're like, wow, you're making a decision on your life based on 0.3% on purchase, which could potentially looks different in 6 to 12 months.
Yep.
So one of the education things that we are trying to do as part of Balea Properties ethos is, hey, let's think about it a little bit more long term.
Yep.
There are things happening in the interest rate environment that are going to help with this.
Yes, for
you
sure.
have tax things happening in the background as well. There's going to be, you can deduct a lot of the stuff through tax.
Yep.
There's rent rises coming as well.
That's the big one.
Rent rise.
Yep. With that market pressure that we talked about, that's huge. That just changes the numbers completely.
Exactly. Completely changes the numbers, right? So when you were negative $10,000, you suddenly negative $4,000.
Yeah.
So
also, a lick of paint. What does that add, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's right.
Get the 0.3% just there.
Exactly. So
do you think
you can? Absolutely, absolutely you can. So one of the renovation project that I mentioned before,
yes,
I actually didn't rent it out from day one because I was like, no, it actually makes sense for me to spend $15,000, get new carpets, get new rent, because it literally adds like 0.8% or something to my yield. I was like,
can I quantify that in terms of the dollars per? Like, how much is 0.8%? Is it $100 a week?
It was
$50 a
from
week.
memory. It was like, putting me on the spot. I think it was $60 a week.
$60 a week.
$60 a week from what I was doing. Yeah, from what the original value appraisal was.
Get your money back in a year.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's how I sort of think about it. It's all a numbers-driven decision, right?
Yep. Sorry, a few years with $60 a week. That's $3,000 a year, and you're spending $15,000. So you're getting a 20% return on that. Yep. $60,
but it adds to my depreciation schedule, right?
Even better.
Exactly. So
clever.
there's ways to do this, right? There's ways to go back to my depreciation guy. Hey, I just did $15,000 worth of renovations.
Yep.
I put in $1,000, $1,000 oven in there. $2,000,
nice oven.
Exactly.
Take care of your tenants.
Yeah, I do, and that's part of it, right? That's a whole other episode. How do you make sure your tenants always stick around?
Okay, cool. We'll document that for the next one.
Exactly. Right? But $2,500 for air conditioner, that all goes into your depreciation schedule, right? It
Very
all forms
interesting.
part of that broad investment strategy, which is something that you're going to be driving as part of our sort of ethos here.
So. Awesome. Very, very clever. Some interesting points there. Let's get on to suburb number 2. So we've got Meadow Heights, a little bit of a reveal there for you to look at. An interesting reveal because you just mentioned that you are looking there as well for one of your clients. Very, very interesting. So let's go into the next one. What is it, Adi? I'm excited to hear
Werribee.
Werribee. Oh, man.
I
got stories about Werribee too.
Oh, no. Growing up in Werribee. Growing up and hearing about Werribee, it was always like, Werribee. What
about the zoo, man?
Or I love the zoo.
It's so good.
I love the zoo.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a
really
cool
nice zoo.
It really is. Yeah,
I've stayed there actually. There's a zoo hotel there. Anyone, you should check it out. It's a pretty good place to go. Really? There's a zoo hotel there.
There you go.
Pretty cool zoo hotel.
There you go. But open range zoo. It's sort of got the works. And what I love about Werribee
as well. It's got the airport, right?
In Werribee.
It's right next to the other airport, Avalon.
Yeah,
that's true.
From Avalon, right? I forget about Avalon. That's so true.
I like it. Clear Melbourneite there. It's just like, airport? There's a second airport in Melbourne?
There's Tom Marine.
No one goes there.
What's
the other one? Yeah. What's it called?
That's terrible.
He's from Melbourne. That's one way. That's one giveaway. Cool.
That's so true. Forgot about Avalon for a
So
second.
Werribee, hey?
Werribee.
I like this.
Again,
this is cool.
I've seen 650 square meter blocks. Really, really solid. All the fundamentals sort of ticked. I've actually even seen properties sub 500 in Werribee. Very rare.
Wow.
Happens very, very rarely. Especially if you want the land component, you want a bit of development potential. That's very rare to have. But 550, 560, you will find a great property. But here's the little disclaimer.
Where's the but? I know.
Things are starting to heat up there.
Oh, man.
Things are starting to heat up. I can hear it from the people that I work with, the agents that I call. There's a lot more activity, Addy, than 4 months ago, than 5 months ago. So this sort of goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, right? We sort of track the things at a macro level. We start seeing the data flow into, the sort of the changes flow into the data level from the suburb. And you know what all of that translates to? An agent not picking up your call.
Yes, that's the one.
Right?
This weekend, I heard the funniest story from the wealthiest person I know. genuinely the wealthiest person I know. Like, he's done very, very well, owns a massive, massive business and has done extraordinary. And he came up to me, he's like, how's the market reading? I'm like, strange question. Like, you can buy pretty much anything you want 10 times over. He's that wealthy. And I asked him, what are you buying? And he said, I'm buying something for a very specific purpose for $350,000. I'm like, that's an interesting purchase price for you. And I'm like, where? And he's like, in Melbourne. And I'm like, oh, how's it going? He's like, no agent picks up the phone. Why is it so hard? That's what he said to me. I'm just like, that's very, very interesting. And also, you might want to change your name on the phone call, because I think that price would just go up 20% to you if they know who you are.
It's now $400,000.
Yes, that's exactly what I did.
There's a disclaimer there.
So that was particularly interesting that agents don't pick up the call. You know, the Werribee thing that's so interesting is when I began Confidence Finance, the previous sort of branded Flint Invest, Werribee was one of the first markets that people started buying. Our first savvy clients started buying a long time ago. So 2015 at that different point in market cycle. Yeah. So what I'm picking up from this is like the same market could be good at one particular point in time and bad at a different particular point in time. There were times buying in Werribee over that 10-year journey kind of would have sucked. And if you looked at a chart, I'm pretty sure that'll tell you that it didn't perform really well for a number of years during that period. But markets move in cycles, and it might be cycle, baby, cycle now. That's why we're talking about Melbourne. It's the cycle element.
Correct.
And Werribee's come up in your data search. Want to go through some of the deep dive of the data as to what we're looking at in Werribee?
So it's a very similar story when you sort of look at the stock and the supply side of the equation. Stock is plummeting, right? So there's pressure there. There's not enough stock to buy, or at least it's depleting over time. I love seeing that. The vacancy rate is, if you imagine a cliff, and imagine just like falling off a cliff, you know, that angle that you make, that's what the vacancy rate looks like. So the rental pressure. Yeah, there's a lot of cliff talk, I know, but this is wild. Like, it's crazy what's been happening in the last sort of 3-4 years. So the rental pressure there is fantastic. And if I talk about 11.62%, the rents went up in the last 12 months.
So strong.
11.62%. Imagine, and that's at a sort of an average level. So there's probably stuff out there that's went up by 20%. You know, so you sort of put all of this together. There's a very little stock. The demand is sort of starting to increase as well. So this is what I would probably term as a colder market transitioning to a warmer market, right?
Like that.
And what I like about these markets is that you can go in, you know, yes, the sort of on the ground demand is starting to increase, but it's still not quite there where you can't negotiate the price. You can still negotiate. You can, if you're savvy enough, you understand your numbers, you've done your comparables, you know that this block is worth, you know, $550,000. Go and put in an offer at $510,000. You know, build some equity in from the beginning.
I like it.
Know?
I like it.
And have reasons why you're saying that. Be like, this needs a little bit of work. I don't want to pay market rate for this. I need to put 20.
Broken.
Exactly. Yeah. I need to put 20 grand in, right? That's how you make money in the upfront. And you're sort of, yes, you're buying in a colder market that's not going to make dramatic changes in the next 12 months.
Be more selective, basically.
You can be selective.
I like that.
That's what I love about long-term sort of investment sort of thesis, you know. Yeah.
You got a chance before it turns into the next Carrum Downs. Or the next Meadow Heights.
Exactly. Right? It's exactly right, man. I love seeing this stuff. And I love executing, because I'm like, man, this is going to like change someone's life in like 24, 36 months, right? It's just completely, I love it.
That's very cool. I like that little high level deep dive into Werribee, which was really, really cool. One thing that I'm picking up in all of this is the pressure that you're talking about.
Yes.
These markets are building up. It's like boiling water that's like frothing up, and there's so much pressure building up. There's an underlying reason, and we've been talking about it for years, is people will stop building in cheaper areas. The numbers just don't make sense. When you try to do a development feasibility in Werribee, when build costs are this much, and land prices are this much, and houses cost, you know, 550 grand, it costs you 450 grand to build a townhouse. Like, to just build a thing regularly, like, you know, it could be a bit cheaper, but once you factor in interest in this environment, a year's holding costs, planning costs, all the additional costs, you might be spending 450 grand.
Builders going bust.
Builders going bust. You got to add in an extra year for your builders to go bust. Uncertainty, risk, profit margins, you got to factor all of that in, right? So nobody's building. And then wait this out. This was 2022. Now it's 2023. Now it's 2024. Now we're in early 2025. Nobody's been building for a number of years. This is a problem. In these cheaper areas, you start finding a new opportunity, this sort of weird arbitrage opportunity where you can buy a house on what sort of block sizes?
550, 600?
600. You're spending $1,000 a square meter on land and getting a free house on top. It's ridiculous that the feasibilities to this and the valuations of these is built up from the weird COVID inflation cycle that's created some of these opportunities, which is kind of a weird arbitrage moment. And Melbourne's in a position where it's just like, it doesn't make much sense because townhouses that cost $400,000 to build or $450,000 to build aren't going to be selling for $450,000 because no one's going to make any money and the land is free. So, they're going to be selling for 500 plus. But you can buy that on a 150 square meter lot, or you can buy the 600 square meter block of land for with a house on it that gets a 4% yield for the exact same price. There's a mismatch in values here because of this construction cycle. So this is an example of that trend looking at as to what the economic change is and what's driving these markets, and then filtering through as to what will happen to these markets over time. You start getting these pressures that you're just talking about. And it's been a couple of years. So, we're looking at these cliffs on charts, which is what you'd expect to see. Exactly. When people stop adding supply. It's just how it works.
Exactly. No, I think nail on the head, man.
What's the last one? Let's go.
Last
Number
one, again,
3.
we're going north of Melbourne again, Melbourne CBD. We are talking about a suburb called Broadford.
Broadford. I've heard of this one. I've seen a few contract of sales here, actually.
Have you?
This one's interesting, yes.
Broadford is, very interesting. A very similar story. You can pick up a property for sub 600.
Where is this?
North Melbourne. North of Melbourne.
Is it near Meadow Heights?
Somewhat near Meadow Heights, yeah. It would be.
Are they neighbouring?
They're not neighbouring. They're not quite neighbouring.
No. Okay, cool.
So I'm looking at some of the numbers here. I'm interested in the suburb now, so I'm actually thinking of refocusing on this for some of my clients. Yeah. Cool. Affordability is great. This is what I would call a little bit before warmer market. This is sort of like a little bit cooler of a market, but it is definitely transitioning to warm because I'm seeing it's weird to see, but I saw the suburbs maybe 6 months ago and the trend for the stock was a little bit trending up. Now I can see it's flat. So you can almost see the data playing out. In the next 6 months, you'll see the stock level starting to deplete. Yep. And you're like, gosh, okay, so the pressure is starting to build up from a stock perspective.
Yes.
Interest rates are probably going to get a cut somewhere. It's already affordable for its residents.
I like it.
Demand is coming. Demand is coming.
Demand is coming. You know why I love this demand is coming thing? We've just talked about Carrum Downs and you just said there's 26 people there. There's 25 people that missed out on that property in Carrum Downs.
Correct.
How many of them are investors? 15?
Correct.
15 to 18, maybe 20 of them. A lot of them are investor activity. You can see that in the data that's there. Where are they going? Will they look at the next house in Carrum Downs? They probably will and be like, oh man, I'm sick of this Carrum Downs nonsense. I've got to pay an extra 20 grand and I can't buy something. You know where they're going to look next?
Yeah.
The next 3 suburbs you just mentioned.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The general perspective here is that they move around with it's money there. They're moving that money around into different places that suit. And if you're looking in Carrum Downs at that sort of price budget, you're probably looking in some of these areas as well. And you start seeing that money shift around into other affordable areas because the buyer criteria is the same. It's just looking at a market that makes sense. So Carrum Downs makes sense at the moment, but these areas will get that neighboring effect one. And neighboring effect doesn't need to be as simple as just look at the suburb next to you and neighboring effect that way. It's more of a value concept. It's more of a this is what you'll do when you can't buy in a certain area. You'll move into something that's similar. It doesn't necessarily need to be the next neighbor. Something similar with yield, something similar with the same data trends that are there, something similar with the type of asset you can purchase. That's what you're going to be looking at. And that's these 3 examples that you've just come up with are all examples of that.
It's exactly that. And I think it reminded me while you were saying that, it sort of reminded me of one of the other suburbs we talked about in our December podcast, which is Melton West.
Yes.
And I'll tell you some of the opportunities I've seen in this place, right? I've recently come across a couple of deals, 800 square meter block. Actually, one of them was 1,000 square meter block, corner block. And I think the asking price was about 625, 630.
Yep.
And you sort of think to yourself, man, this is like prime development potential. Yes, the yield is a little bit lower on the upfront, then you sort of see Melton West as, like rental increases, the market pressure in terms of what's happening in rent, that 3.5 becomes 4.5 pretty quickly. And then you factor in cash rate reductions. Suddenly your cash flow is actually pretty good within like 18 months.
Yeah, and you've got a 1,000 square meter block.
In Metro Melbourne. Like, well, that's crazy talk, right? So
there's one more thing to add to that development potential as well. So with the numbers not working from a development perspective, you do that for long enough of a period of time, that townhouse that was supposed to be built, that doesn't get built, that never gets built, that hasn't been built for 10 years, keeps going and going. And then you're just like, what? I've got a townhouse in Melton West. I'll pay top dollar for that.
Yes.
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
And then you have that price appreciation that occurs, and then the development feasibility works.
Yep.
And all that while you're sitting on 1,000 square meter block. You can probably put 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know. I've seen plenty of people put lots of dwellings on 1,000 square meter block. You can put a lot of dwelling on that. It's got a decent enough. You said corner as well. So that's a good
like
deal.
18 meter frontage. Like, it's crazy.
That's pretty good. Yeah, you can build pretty good stuff on that over time. So that sounds like a good deal.
Yeah. So, but that's what I mean. Like, these are some of the opportunities that are available in a market that everyone seems to be hating on. So there are opportunities, and that's part of our, I guess, education, right? We are showing you some of the markets that are available to buy in. It's still affordable, sub 600K, sometimes sub 550K. You can go in with a really strong offer.
Yes.
To, use some of that negotiation skill.
Yes.
Listen to some Alex Hormozy, videos, learn the art of sale or whatever it is you need to do, and then just get cracking, man. There's some great deals out there.
I like that.
I'm excited.
This was wonderful, Adi. And
thank you, Red.
I am very happy that we've done a couple of these episodes now, because whenever I get asked, whenever I go anywhere, and the first thing people ask is, hey, is that property guy? Hey, Rita, where should I buy? What do you think of this area? I will be like, this is a really good question. We've done a podcast on this. We've named about 6 suburbs in Melbourne to look at, and probably went through another half dozen in total across our range of Melbourne analysis to give you some of the answers that you're looking for. And this is the really, really cool part about Adi. It's deals. Now we're talking about deals. Now we're talking about specific assets. We're talking about corner blocks. We're talking about specific numbers of where you're going to be buying. And that's the sort of expertise you bring on board when you spend all your time deal making and looking at properties and trying to buy properties. You know what the deal looks like. So I'm super, super excited to be doing this podcast with you this year. For everyone listening, we will be doing more podcasts this year. Curtis will still be a regular. I'll be doing it with Curtis. I'll be doing it with Adi. We're going to talk all things property, all things economy, all things driving markets like we always do. But now we have a deal expert to feed in some amazing content for you all. Until the next one, see you all